There we go. Hello, welcome to Nerina. Welcome to this little mini conversation, we're going to call it, around training and getting the most out of our training, particularly as we move through perimenopause and menopause, with a big sort of focus on strength training and personal training and the benefits of that. So as people probably know, I specialise in doing empowering women to work with and not against their changing physiology, because our hormones are our drivers throughout our lives as women, but particularly as we hit perimenopause and menopause, things start to go into flux. Women sort of say things like, why is what they always did not working anymore? And many women don't have the confidence to start an exercise plan as they move through their 50s and beyond. So as part of my little strapline, which is around resetting your training, recharging your energy and reclaiming your power, I want to sort of talk about how we can train smarter, not harder, during these years. So I'm delighted to have a good friend, sleep therapist, author, all-round amazing person and PT client now of mine, Nerina, with me today to talk through some of these areas. So welcome.
Thank you, Denise, and it's really exciting. I'm so delighted that you've invited me to have this conversation with you.
Well,
Really,
I think you bring so much kind of, I think, just from conversations we've had about training, you bring so many insights. It's great to hear it sort of reflected back at what's working. And of course, you have the journey that a lot of people will identify with, of how you've moved through stages of life, what you used to do, what works, what doesn't. So we're going to come on to that in a second. So actually, to kick us off, just wanted to say, could you give us a background to what your training, your background in training is, what types of things you used to do, and then we'll come on to when things start to change.
Okay, so when I was a baby, sorry, no, we won't go.
Yeah, we've got about 5 minutes.
Right, okay. So actually, no, it's not too far removed from the truth. But between the age of 7 and 14, we lived in South America, in Guyana, where my parents come from. And I think that's where my barefoot journey started, because I was born in London, and then my parents went back to Guyana when I was 7. And at school, we didn't have plimsolls for sport. We just ran around with no shoes on when we were doing sport. Of course, we wore shoes to school, but and at home, we didn't have things like trainers and plimsolls and stuff like that. And I was really active. I was always climbing trees. I ran a lot. We played a lot of French skipping, jumping rope. So I was very, very active. Then came back to England because of the political problems when I was in my teens, and went to an all-girls grammar school and just stopped exercising. I mean, I just didn't get the whole thing of nets and balls and lacrosse sticks and hockey sticks. I just didn't get it. And I'm quite small. I'm 5'1". So I did no exercise for quite a number of years. And then it was when I was doing my PhD at uni that I discovered the pool, and discovered that because I couldn't swim as well. And probably learned to swim in my early 20s, but really badly. And also started going to the gym. And can I shamelessly name drop?
Yes, of course.
Okay. That's when I was doing a little bit of training with Right Said Fred and Richard Fairbrass.
That wasn't the name I thought you were going to drop, I have to say.
I'd love to know what you thought I was going to say, but Right Said Fred and Richard Fairbrass at the Dance Attic in Putney. Big shout out to them. I'm not in touch with them anymore, but I was really into bodybuilding. I got really almost hooked on the whole bodybuilding thing. And I remember back then, I remember a friend saying to me a few weeks ago, God, you were quite big. And given that I'm only 5'1", I think I was taking it very seriously. So I was doing a lot of compound squats and deadlifts and stuff. So I was bulking up quite quickly. And then that took me into discovering running, and then getting on a bike, and even a brief stint as a courier in the city while I was writing up my PhD. And then I signed up to do my first marathon, and did the typical thing of I was innately a sprinter, fast runner, but I joined a running club and just basically started going out and doing long, slow runs. and injured my right knee. Ended up with a right knee injury, so dragged myself back to the gym, because by then I had abandoned weight training, and dragged myself back to the gym. So this, by then, I would think I was in my mid-30s, and met this South African coach, absolutely bonkers guy, Craig Cleland, who got me into doing triathlon in the process of rehabilitating my knees. And so 7 marathons, over 40 triathlons, including an Ironman later. There I was, I was well into endurance sport. And I loved it. And I was going through a lot of personal stress and trauma. We don't have to go through the history of all of that, but exercise had really become the thing that was keeping me sane, and going out and doing long runs, long bikes. And I sharpened up my swim, but you're going to help me. You're going to help me with my swimming as well, aren't you? But I thought I'd always be doing marathons and triathlons and things. And then I got to 2012, and I was going into perimenopause, and I didn't know it because people weren't talking about it then. It just, we didn't have the Davina McCalls and people like you. They didn't know, and I didn't know why my marathon times were getting slower and slower. And I'd done 7 marathons, and I always said, if I go over 4 hours, I'm going to stop doing marathons. And it was crying my way around Edinburgh Marathon, and coming out with a 4 hours, 11 minutes. I thought, right, running, doing marathons needs to stop. I was still running. I was still cycling, still doing the odd little triathlon. But then as I sort of went through perimenopause and menopause, the niggling injuries started playing up. An old ankle injury, which had not caused any problems at all before perimenopause, suddenly flared up. That caused an imbalance, which caused the left knee to flare up again. And before I knew it, I couldn't run anymore. But in all of this, I had taken to climbing. Climbing was great. And then the pandemic hit. And so I couldn't get to climbing walls. I was still climbing quite a few trees from time to time. I was going down to the river and swimming. That's when I met you. I wasn't doing anything like gym or heavy weights or anything like that, because gyms were all shut. And my body was getting more and more out of balance. And I hadn't been to a gym for decades, probably anyway. All my training was outside or in the climbing wall. And so the thought of going back to a gym was just not what I wanted to do. I also was doing a bit of animal flow type stuff, 360-degree movement with Julie Angel, which I loved as well. But I was still getting lots of niggles and things like that. And also noticing I was gaining weight around the middle. And I just couldn't really get on top of the weight. And yeah, I like a little piece of cake at the end of the day, as much as anyone else. And, that was every evening during the pandemic. It's always been cake. That's been not huge amounts, just a little piece of cake. But it just seemed like it didn't matter how little I ate or how much I ate. It was the same. I had this heaviness around the middle, which I'd never had before, and a tiredness. And then I could see what you were doing, and you were inspiring me, and your PT business was taking off. And I thought, oh, maybe it's time to go back to the gym. And, I had a lot of kit at home, but I thought maybe I could go back to the gym. And I felt really nervous about it. I didn't feel like I had much confidence, even though I'd done so much in the past. And then it was that first session with you back in the gym again. I thought, I can do this. I know this stuff.
Yeah.
This is home.
It's such a common story. So I'm going to rewind a little bit there.
Yeah.
Just being a David Bowie fan, obviously, to go back to when you said those changes started to happen. So did you say 2012, was it?
2012 was the last marathon. I think I continued running until about 2017. And then it was my watch breaking and my Garmin. And then I took the watch off, started going out for runs. But then noticing that I was just tired.
Yeah.
And looking back on it, I had, oh gosh, what's it called again? REDS?
REDS, yeah, relative energy deficiency.
Yeah.
Well,
and for the Ironman and for the half Ironman and for the marathon as well, I wasn't eating enough. I always struggled to eat enough when I was training hard.
Well, isn't that interesting? Because you're saying now looking back, but at the time, no one ever sort of said to you, or there was no knowledge for you to, and that's what I hear a lot, because obviously perimenopause can start to kick in for people. Well, it can be quite early, but for a lot of people, 40, mid-40s onwards. And
Mm.
so much, as you know, obviously physiology is a lot on your background anyway, but the hormones are going into flux, and it's that thing about why is everything I'm doing not doing the same, having the same effects it used to. And in fact, when that's happening, and what I find a lot of people are doing is pushing through and thinking,
Yes.
especially marathon training would be a classic, because a lot of people get, and let's remind ourselves that most training plans that are off the shelf come from research, which is done 96% on men. So apparently women are too hard to analyze. So it's no wonder that you get these training plans that say things like long run, 2 hours, heart rate zone 3 is probably like the worst thing you can do. It's that sort of gray zone area, and it makes cortisol sort of circulates, keeps your cortisol levels high, insulin resistance, creates then that belly fat and all these things you're seeing, cortisol, tiredness. So yeah, it's no surprise. And well, yeah, what you're saying about under fueling, I see. It's such a, I don't know if that's something you are aware of now, looking back as well, or about when you're working with the coach, for example, the male coach. Do you think there was that? I know in a lot of sports, there's the real emphasis on weight, and someone was asking me about it the other day. I think it's very prevalent for women throughout their age, throughout the whole life stage, anyway, isn't it? There's such an emphasis on dieting and body image and so on. But do you think that was playing a factor, and you maybe under fueling, or how do you think that played out?
I was under fueling. We just didn't talk about nutrition, and also I was older than all the. It was a whole crew of us, and it was a great little. My sister had passed away in 2002, very unexpectedly. So the whole marathon training, triathlon training was massive support for me, massive. And that they were my little community that held my head together. But they were a lot young. They were younger than me. And so I was training with them. They were in their 20s. I was in my 30s, then going into early 40s. And then I had my child. I had my daughter when I was 40. My sister had just died. So looking back on it, I remember getting these sweats at night and just thinking, what's going on with me? So we didn't really talk about nutrition. I mean, Craig was a good coach, and we did a lot of, he wasn't big on doing long old distances. He was big on plyometrics and strength training. We did do, and I was quite strong. I had the foundations from, back in the gym with Right Said Fred dudes. And I could always do things like pull-ups and stuff like that. And also, I didn't mention that I had a lot of dancing history in my body as well, from dancing Latin American dance, salsa, and then being an extreme sort of multi-passionate person, ending up teaching a bit of Latin American dance, salsa as well, for a little while. So all that history was in my body, but nutrition, no. And I did London Marathon once, and then applied every year after that. I never got in again. And so we would go off to Paris to do the Paris Marathon instead. And I remember just rocking up to do these Paris marathons, having just had like half a croissant or something like that, because I felt too nervous to eat.
Yeah.
And if I was given the option of a steak and vegetables and, good food the night before a race, or cake, I'd have had cake. And a bowl of ice cream, I would have had that, And then I found it very hard to eat during races on the bike and stuff like that. I just couldn't eat, made me feel sick. So yeah, that just wasn't the awareness. Really wasn't awareness.
Yeah, definitely. I know could do a whole other conversation about food alone, couldn't we? But, what do you find? So when you're, I think before we come on to sort of what works and what doesn't, and when we were working together, what do you think the barriers you sort of faced, or things that from your experience you have seen? And I'll chip in here obviously as well, but the great exercise myths that you've heard.
Yeah, like I've done the gym thing. I'm not anymore. I'm just not a gym bunny anymore. Don't like that sort of thing. I don't really have the confidence, strangely enough, because it was such a rustic gym, the one that I went to, the Dance Attic in Putney, and most of it was free weights and heavy weights. But I didn't have the confidence to go into a gym with all the machines and things. And I was also a little bit snobbish about it. I don't do gyms. I train outdoors. The most indoors I'll do is an indoor climbing wall, but I've climbed outdoors, or I swim outdoors. I don't do swimming pools because I also developed a chlorine allergy as well. And so swimming in a pool, and maybe that came on as I went into perimenopause, looking back on it. Because in the early days of training for triathlon and doing big distances, 5K swims and stuff like that, I wasn't having any problems. But then as I went into menopause, I was allergic to chlorine. So I just thought, I just don't know what I'm doing in there, and it's just for people who want to pose, and I haven't got time. But what was sitting underneath was I haven't got confidence, and also kind of a lack of understanding. And I'm almost embarrassed to say this for someone who has a PhD in physiology, but it's not my area of expertise. A lack of understanding about the importance of strength training for women as they get older.
Yeah.
And also a bit of, I don't want to get all bulked up again.
Yes, now that's one. I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's something that I hear quite a lot. Oh, you don't want to get like big, muscly, and you'll know from back in the day when you were doing that, how much work needs to go in to get that sort of strength training type side of things. You're going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting to get to that size. When actually, and that's a shame that puts women off strength training, because we should be, as we've discussed, be working on that higher aspect of, well, mixing things up, which we'll come on to, but from a strength training perspective, low reps, high weights. And I mean, I don't know if you're aware of this from your background, but our muscle mass as women declines between 3 and 8% per decade from the age of 30. From the age of 30, and you think, well, that's it. And then from the age of 60, it's going into even more rapid decline. So we need to be doing strength training, really. And this isn't just about women in perimenopause and menopause. It's anybody from, once they've passed their 20s, you're on a bit of a slippery slope if you don't keep that in check. Yeah,
and kind of fighting for muscle, fighting to keep your muscle, really. And so I'm so excited and gratified to have come back to getting in the gym. And I don't know if you'll remember when we went to the gym, I was quite excited I was just excited after that session. And I don't think you certainly didn't push me hard. But it felt like coming home. It felt like a massive psychological boost, a massive confidence boost for me. And this feeling that here I've got something I can go back to now, actually. And it gave me a lot of hope. Because I was starting to feel quite sort of depressed about it, about feeling so tired. And I've always had so much energy. And, because of my work, I do a lot of public speaking, and I'm a sleep and energy expert, and so I'm talking to people about energy all the time. But there I was thinking, I'm just tired. And I don't know if I've got the energy to go back. And I don't know if I've got the energy to go back to climbing, because, of course, the climbing wall wasn't open, and so I'd had years away from climbing, and I was worried that the strength would have just gone. But going back to climbing again, having now been in the gym, I know we'll come to what I'm doing and what you designed for me. My climbing has improved. I want to talk about climbing. I want to talk about dancing, because it's giving me the strength to go back to do the things that I absolutely love doing, without having to worry about, can my body do this? So I was dancing on Monday, ecstatic dance it's called. That means 2 hours of solid dance, and there's a phase of the dance called chaos, so that's like jumping up and down and doing all kinds of things, and I was great. I just felt fantastic. I needed to stretch the next day. Having a strong frame now means I can do stuff like that, and not worry about doing injury to myself, or not being able to keep up, because my body is strong.
So, I mean, going back to one thing you were saying there, I think that for a lot of people, the initial barrier can be the confidence, can't it? Especially if as you'd said earlier, going into a gym, you sort of have the perception of macho. I mean, I see it as well in the gym I go into. Sometimes you think, oh, that guy's on that piece of machinery or something, and I don't want to, are you going to wait endlessly, or are you going to ask them if you can work in with them? Are you going to ask if you can work that bit of kit? So that can be an initial barrier for people. And like anything, as you say, from being away from your climbing for a while, or doing anything at all. I mean, I think about it when I go back to my guitar playing, you think, I haven't done it for ages. Oh, almost too afraid to start it again because I'll be really rubbish. And then you think you just need to make that first step, don't you? So if we come on to what we did, so I mean, I obviously am a big believer in, we've got sort of 4 pillars of the type of exercise we should be doing: perimenopause, menopause, but also, as we spoke about earlier, a lot of these translate to women in general. One thing you hear about younger women I work with is that they don't have that understanding about, there are times in their cycle when actually they are stronger, and that is, strangely enough, day one, your period is a time when you
I
can be
know.
getting high intensities. Yeah, right. And you think, but people, our society and all these people have been sort of saying, oh, it's a time to rest and it's a time to really back off. And you think, oh, I've got an event coming up, but I've got my period. Well, actually, you could do really well at that event, but it's, so that's a whole other area. But yeah, so we spoke about strength training, so important, high intense HIIT training, high intensity interval training, doing some of the aerobic work, but we're talking about sort of zone 1, zone 2 kind of walking, and I know that you're a big fan of walking and swimming and that sort of level stuff. And plyometrics is that one I'm glad to see you do as well, which is this sort of multi-directional movements, because that's so great for our joint stability and bone turnover as well. So we started working together. What would you like to share? What you've enjoyed about it? What you feel has been working for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm loving getting back into the gym. And well, let's start with the HIIT first of all. The HIIT session that you created for me, which isn't that long. It's 30 odd minutes. And I just know that when did I do my HIIT? I did day before yesterday, and I was a bit tired, and I had to walk the dog for an hour first, and then I came back and then got everything out. In fact, I didn't go to the gym for that. I tend to do that when at home on the decking. And I got all the weights out. But as soon as I get going, it just lifts my energy, because I know it's short, sharp bursts of high intensity exercise. That's doable. And pretty soon for me, my energy starts to shift out of lethargy. And I know you said I'm a great fan of walking and swimming. I'm not a fan of walking, actually, I have to say. Maybe that's the runner in me. I find walking really boring. And I think it was almost like, oh gosh, so when I got my dog during the pandemic, I was thinking, have I become the person who's only fit by, that's their only fitness thing, is just to go for walks. And I'm actually not a great walker. I just sort of drag my feet along and I walk quite slowly. And I think, I much prefer running to walking, doing things quickly, especially with a little dog who wants to sniff. And I call it reading the news. When we come out, she used to read the news and sniff all the lampposts. So walking doesn't really do it for me, but having something that it like the HIIT, it meets that need for something that's fast and furious and a bit buzzy, but it's not so long that it's going to kill me, not like the plyometric sessions of old when we used to go to track and you'd be doing sort of an hour and a half plyometrics, and it was real killers. Nothing like that now, but I feel good and I feel strong as a result of it. And then I'm loving the going to the gym, and whether it's just dividing it up into upper body, lower body. So I just do 2 sessions a week. And I chose deliberately a little community gym. That was the gym that you came to me, and we did our first session there. And it's really low key, and you get elderly people, you get people with various disabilities, you get the younger teenagers who want to look cool and they're taking your Instagram shot, but it's not that posy. And it's really unassuming. And just I was there this morning, and I was working in with a teenager to do my pull-ups, and another guy just before I did my deadlifts. And it's not threatening. It's not at all threatening. And the Dance Attic all those decades ago was like that as well. It wasn't a swish gym. And for me, that's really important. I just want to go somewhere that's down to earth. It's got the weights, got the heavy weights. What I'm really loving is doing the compound exercises, and just noticing, seeing my strength increasing from, going to the gym and doing deadlifts. I think I remember texting you, I just did a 30K deadlift, to 60K now, which is more than I weigh.
Wow.
The nicest thing I'm noticing is that I'm eating well. My body's being guided by the exercise. I'm eating well, and the belly fat has gone. I did, as you know, I went against your advice, and I had a bit of a 4-month adventure, an experiment with fasting, and some of it was a bit disastrous because, again, a lot of this information isn't geared to women. So you've got certain doctors out there, prominent people saying you should be fasting and intermittent fasting and skipping breakfast, which isn't a part of my sleep methodology as well. As you know, I tell people who have problems sleeping, you've got to have a nutrient rich breakfast to steady the nervous system and stabilize blood sugar. But I started fasting, but in my normal style, I went a bit over the top. And it was when my hair started kind of falling out that I thought, oh, I don't think this is very good, because I was still trying to train and I wasn't feeling very well, and I was going against your advice.
I don't think you told me about the hair, and I think I think I realised it was 4 months, and I'm always I was talking on a podcast yesterday where we were talking about this, and said, what do people ever do things that you say they shouldn't? And I said, well, all the time. But I think that it's important that you do your own experimentation as well, because I'll say, don't do high intensity training late at night, because, as you know, sleep and energy expert, work with your cortisol levels, which are elevated in the morning, and then they should be drifting off as you go towards bed. But I know people do it, and I see people do it, and then they almost like make little notes saying, I shouldn't have done that last night. I feel terrible. I couldn't sleep. But I think it's really useful for me to have seen someone do the experiment you did with fasting, because you start to question it and think, oh, well, there's so many people talking about it. Social media is full of it. But yeah, all the research I'd read was, again, most of the research has been done on men. So the people who do bring it to the fore are quite a small voice. So you were finding your energy levels, it wasn't working well when you were doing
energy levels weren't so good. I needed to start having 1 coffee a day, and I'm still on, well, most days I'll have 1 coffee a day in the morning, which I quite like, and I enjoy the coffee. So I don't beat myself up about that, but I think what had happened during those years, perimenopause and menopausal years, is a sort of, my adrenals were under fire, and my thyroid. And even though it wasn't at a clinical level, it would have been subclinical. I think the fasting wasn't so good for that. So it was always hard for me to get the food in when I came off a fast. I don't regret experimenting at all. It did give me a kickstart into losing some of that weight around the middle, but there's no way I could fast like a lot of the Mindy Piltzes of this world will say, fast and go to the gym and do your workout. But what they're not factoring in is those big, heavy compound exercises that are so good for us as women as we get into these ages, and I'm in my late 50s. It's so important for us to push those, as you said, heavyweight, low reps. You just can't do it fasted. You feel sick. And so I eventually stopped. But what I have learned, what I've taken away from the fasting experiment, is that perhaps once a month or once every few weeks, particularly when the cake and chocolate starts to creep up again, I just do a 24-hour fast or something like that, or 20 to 24-hour fast, which really hones my awareness. And also for me, spiritually, my spiritual practice is very important for me. I've noticed that if I'm fasting, I have to be very, very connected in spiritually. So I meditate a lot. I'm calm. So it's not going to be a day when I'm going to be doing a TV thing or giving a presentation. It's not going to be a high energy day. It's not a travel day, and it's not a gym day.
Yeah, that's really good. And I think that because I remember back in the day when we first met and we sort of spoke about fasting a little bit and said, I think, and I still, agree with this and what you're saying there, that I think there's a time and a place for fasting, and it's when you're relaxed, or this is why people do them on retreats as well. I think
that's right.
That would be really good as well, because you're in that sort of, parasympathetic state. You don't have other stresses of life, let alone training, but just everyday stresses of life coming in to sort of play with that. So thank you for being the fasting guinea pig.
I've got my hair back. It stopped dropping out. I think it's all, we're back to balance again. But yeah, I think that one stopped me in my tracks pretty quickly, actually. Yeah.
So coming back to the sort of PT, why? What have you found useful about working with a personal trainer and
Yeah. So, you know, I haven't worked with a personal trainer since marathon and triathlon training, and I didn't think I'd ever go back to it. And then during the pandemic, I started working with Julie Angel, who got me into 360-degree movement and highlighted to me that I'd been doing too much movement in one plane. And again, the walking, doing a lot of walking with the dog, that brought up the knee problem even more, because I was just moving in one plane. So that got me onto the trajectory of really bringing in different types of movement, and it was animal flow. But I knew that I knew there needed to be something else as well, and there needed to be some strong weights. And but then, as I said, the confidence and everything, I just didn't really know where to start, even though I have all this history and experience. I really didn't know where to start, and I think I'm quite surprised about that in a way. So the fact that I didn't know where to start, let alone someone who hasn't done a lot of exercise for a while, you know, I just think having a personal trainer, having somebody like you who's knowledgeable, who knows from the inside out, you know, you will understand perimenopause and menopause. So you can understand all of this. I had flirted over a decade ago with a personal trainer. I turned up at the gym, I think it was a Virgin, and it was a young guy, and they said, "Oh yeah, try. He's really good." And he saw that I had this innate strength and pushed me really hard, and I was showing off. And I basically felt really ill for 2 days afterwards because he wasn't factoring in my age, the fact that, you know, I hadn't done this for a while, hormonal issues. Hadn't
Yeah.
thought about any of that, hadn't asked me any questions about that. Just saw that as I was there, I was in decent form, decent shape, you know. So I think having you, it holds me accountable. And also, I didn't have to make it up myself and just think, oh, what shall I do when I go to the gym? And so when I went to the gym this morning, I knew before I went what I was going to be doing. I knew how long it would take. I knew what I'd eat beforehand. I knew what I would eat afterwards. And I'd send you a message, don't I? Say, I'm going to load up now. I've just finished my session, blah, blah, blah. So I tend to do that. And it just keeps me accountable. So even down to, you know, what time I go to bed the night before. I know that I need sleep. I need my sleep. So I've got the energy to get up, walk the dog, then hit the gym, you know. So I think that accountability and the practicalities of what do I do? What do I actually do?
Yeah.
You know, because like a hit session, for example, there's no way I'm going to do that to myself unless someone is guiding me to do that to myself. I mean, I'm highly motivated, you know, but I probably would go, yeah, no, I can't be bothered with that last one. Yeah, I've done
That's
enough.
true. And also, I think I know when someone's watching you as well, you're sort of thinking 40 seconds, 45 seconds. And I think if you're doing it on your own, you can be a bit like, well, that feels like enough. But if someone else is there going, well, can you get another one out there? We've got 3 seconds left. but
Yeah, but also the first time I trained with you and we did the hit on my decking, I don't know if you remember, but it was really hot.
yeah, it was.
And then we went for a quick swim afterwards, didn't we? We were meeting someone, and so I hadn't fueled properly, and you were telling me you need something, and I just didn't really listen, and I just grabbed a few nuts or something, and I felt a little bit unwell, and I thought, gosh, it's quite a hard hit session. But I was just amazed at how quickly the next session didn't hit me too hard. It was just right. And each session I felt stronger and stronger, and I've been able to focus more on my technique and the breathing and, you know, resting between sets and things. So yeah, it's really good to have someone that have your guidance.
That's great. Good to hear. Now, when you're saying going back to that first session in the gym as well, that made me smile. Well, there were a couple in the gym, weren't there? And I'm not sure if you've kept it up, but you did remember, because I think we did a session on the rowing machine, and you were saying you've forgotten actually that you quite like the rowing machine. You've probably never been since, but
yeah. I did that, and I did it today. I did that little hit on the rowing machine today. Really enjoyed it. Chose a particular set of tracks for that 10 minutes, and I love that feeling of, after having worked quite hard with deadlifts and pull-ups and, you know, quite big moves and heavy weights, to actually then find that I've got a bit more left in the tank to do that. That felt really good. The other thing that I now let myself do is just sit down as well between the sets, because I used to be really snobby about people sitting around in the gym. For goodness sake, why are you just sitting there? Come on, you're here to. And I'd be supersetting.
All right.
And I've now learned that actually I don't need to. And you threw a lot of really good information my way as well, Stacey Sims, because I listened to her once and her voice irritated me. And so I stopped listening to her. But then I remember driving to Stansted Airport and you'd sent me all these podcasts with Stacey Sims talking about women in perimenopause and menopause. So I know that you do a lot of research before you recommend stuff. So I trust you. And I think that's really important with a personal trainer is that there are a lot of people out there who are just getting qualifications and that haven't got the lived experience. And I think it's the lived experience that you bring to it that really makes a difference. It's not theoretical. It's not theoretical. You're speaking from your experience as well as all of the stuff you research, because you're really quite anal about researching stuff, aren't you? So sorry, that's an awful thing to say.
I take that as a compliment. So I don't want. Yeah. And the Stacey said, well, I did her course specifically on menopause for athletes, and yeah, I mean, for me, and although I was probably my own guinea pig during that as well, going through it, it was great to sort of experiment on myself and think, I know this will make me feel tired. This actually makes me feel strong. It's definitely, as you say, sort of lived experience for sure. And the last thing I want to ask you about, because I know it's something we've spoken about quite a lot, is finding your flow and the importance of getting into like finding the joy in something, because that's out of the door to do what we want to do as well, isn't it? So how does that sort of resonate with you?
Yeah, so I am a fun-loving person. I like to play. I love to play, and I like to go out and find monkey bars and trees and children's playgrounds. Sounds wrong saying it like that, but just fun in the apparatus and doing a little bit of sort of parkour type stuff, and having the confidence to go and do that stuff. And I do have to thank Julie Angel's work as well for the confidence to go out and do, and get on monkey bars and stuff like that again. But going back to some monkey bars, I think it was last week, having started the training with you, and I thought I would have lost some of that 360-degree movement and play and swing and that sort of thing. And actually, I'm stronger. I'm stronger at it now, having done the stuff with you. So I think for me, it's really important that I go to the gym and that I play. It has to be fun. So I love my music. Music is a massive part of my life. I could never just go to the gym and just listen to the radio or listen to television and the news while I'm exercising. I have to charge up my headphones. I have to have the right music on. I think about the music before I do deadlifts, and so it's very mindful music, so I'm not pushing myself without thinking, and then I could hurt myself. So I think about it all, and I find some joy, and then I play around. I've now found the confidence to get on the Swiss ball and bounce around, kneeling on a Swiss ball, playing with my pull-ups, playing with
hula hooping.
Hula hooping. So even though you haven't necessarily put this into my program, I'm now bringing in the stuff that I've been doing for years but had fallen by the wayside, got the hula hoop out again. So it's given me the confidence, and the fact that I'm doing the plyometrics, I'm jumping onto a high step. I don't think I would have done it if I hadn't had you there kind of holding my back. You'd had my backs. I would have thought no, because I didn't say this, but when my knee started niggling, I went to a physio, and then the physio sent me to, I ended up at another physio who was a physio to famous tennis players, Wimbledon, who win. And she put my knee into a brace for 6 weeks and said, you will wear this brace for the rest of your life. You cannot run anymore. You can't dance without wearing the brace. This is it. You will have to, if you climb, you have to wear the brace. And I was so depressed that I had to wear this. It was really ugly brace, I threw it away after 3 weeks of wearing it, and I just felt depressed. I hadn't met you then, and we hadn't gone into the pandemic, but I just thought, that's it, I'm not wearing that brace, but I can't do very much other than just walk, really. So I don't have, and I wouldn't have had the confidence to do things like deadlifts and plyometrics and stuff like that. And if, when I told you I was jumping up onto that step thing, you said, oh, that's good. You didn't go, oh, but your knee. And of course I've got an MRI. I've had an MRI that says you've got this going on in your knee and osteoarthritis and and but the thing is, we are not our MRIs,
Yes.
you
Yeah.
know. And I suppose many people of my age who go and have a scan of this, that, or the other, they're going to find something.
Mm.
Do you
Yeah.
allow that to define you?
Yeah. I know. I think that's a big thing. Actually, we should end on is around limitations, and because I was talking to you before about how I probably never really got into exercise as a youngster because of my asthma, and I thought, no, but I didn't want to be defined by that. So I think that's how I got into swimming so much, because it felt easier, and people told me, well, actually, it's good for people with asthma. But I think, as you say, we know so many people as we start to get older, and it's like, oh, this hurts, that hurts, and of course, the reason why injuries can start to occur, one, around different times of your menstrual cycle, if you still have one,
Yeah.
and also as you go into perimenopause with joint laxity and tendons and so on. So we can be more susceptible to injuries. But yeah, don't write us off. It's,
No, absolutely don't write us off. And I just think, going there on Monday and dancing, and there were loads of people who were younger than me who were just sitting it out by the side, after 45 minutes, an hour or so. And I was still going strong. And yeah, of course I had to stretch the next day. But the fact that I can do that. But what I love as well is that I think it makes me, because we've talked about fit for what? What do you want to be fit for?
yeah.
And the fact that my work can be high intensity. If I'm traveling, presenting on a stage, it takes energy to speak. People underestimate sometimes. You have to be fit so that you don't come crashing afterwards. And I think rediscovering my strength again and my fitness is a big part of what I do, because let's face it, the population are living longer, but are they living better? Are they dying slow deaths now as opposed to the fast deaths, when we didn't have antibiotics and stuff? So a big part of my work, and I know yours, a huge part of it is positive aging, positive longevity. So I'm able to walk the talk, maybe not run the talk, but,
I'll definitely very much jump the talk,
climb the talk.
flying the talk. I think, no, I'm glad you mentioned the fit for what, because I think it is such an important thing, because it doesn't need to be that, might be training people that are doing a big cycling endurance event or a triathlon, or myself doing a 10 swim, but it's not, everyone has their own challenges, but your challenge could be that you want to be playing with your grandkids and be able to pick them up and put them on the monkey bars, and you don't taking a shopping out of the car. A lot of people can't, even do those sort of basic functional movements, and we don't want to be at that stage in later life. So very positive.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you, Denise. And I'm looking forward to you helping me with my swimming, because my swimming's not the best. I used to be in the last third of the cohort when I'd be getting out of the water when I was doing triathlon, and then I'd make it up on the bike and the run. My swimming's still not great. So
right. Our target is to get around that little island.
Yes, exactly.
And let's look at some technique. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. It's been really, really insightful, and look forward to our next session. Thank you.